Joe. 3, 2, 1. All right, let's go. All right, we're here with Kris Norris today, man. Thanks for coming down, doing this ToneCrate pack with us. It's been awesome. So we've been doing this ToneCrate pack for a couple of days, and what's been the experience like for you so far?
Unique, because I've never done profiling myself, so it was cool seeing. I mean, you do it very well, and you know what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
So it was cool to see somebody that really knows what they're doing and watch and learn from you at the same time.
Well, yeah, I know. I appreciate that. It's like an art form. It took me, I don't know, a good while to like be able to like actually like understand like what it was doing. You know what I mean? Like, because there's like so many different steps in the profiling process, but the hardest one being that like refining stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when you first explained that to me, you could have just said, "Oh, well, there's this refine thing." But you actually explained what's happening because you understand and know the process behind it.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's taught me a lot about critical listening in like a real different way. You know what I mean? Like I make records like you do as well, but listening to things like hypercritically is like what we do. But when you don't have like a gauge or like a waveform or any kind of like picture in front of you, and you're just literally listening to something and hearing it change in front of you, it's like it's different. You know what I mean? It's a different process,
right,
to analyze that stuff. But anyways, yeah, the pack's come out really great. It's going to be available the 1st of December. It's right around the corner. And by the time this is out, it'll probably be out as well. But I want to thank you again for coming down and doing this. It's been awesome. As I've told you to your face and several times over the weekend, Darkest Hour is like one of my favorite bands. Hidden Hands of a Sadist Nation was like my absolute favorite record that when we talk about all time in any genre, it really is like my favorite record. I've listened to it 1,000 times. I love Undoing Ruin. I love Deliver Us. I love So Sedated, Mark of the Judas. I even love some of the recent ones as well. And I don't know, Hidden Hands is just my favorite. We've talked about some of the experiences and things like that just over the weekend while we're getting some work done. But what was like one memorable moment from that recording experience with Frederick out in Studio Fredman that stands out to you?
So with Frederick, it's difficult because if you know him, you understand his warped sense of humor because he has this different sense of humor. I mean, the dude is just a goofball and he's a jokester. He likes to have fun. But he's also very prim, proper Swedish. So you can't tell, like, is this dude pissed or is he just, like, taking the piss out of me and having fun? Because he's very stoic, you know?
Yeah.
And so for Akitas Veritas, the instrumental, it was kind of almost put together in the studio with me and Ryan. And that was, like, our baby. The rest of the guys didn't even participate. Not that they didn't want to, but they were like, this is your guys' baby. Let's let you do your thing. We're going to go grab some food and come back and see what you guys have done.
That's awesome.
So as we're kind of writing and everything, I can play piano, but I'm not the best in the world. So I wrote and notated out the piano parts. And they had this super nice old piano from the 1800s in there. And it was just brilliant and beautiful sounding. But I don't know piano well. So I just notated everything in a notebook, like scribbling the lines.
Yeah.
And Frederick found it and just made fun of me probably for 30 minutes nonstop. He's completely picking on me for being this music nerd. And he loved it. He was not serious at all, just kind of making fun of me. But he gave me so much crap for like 30 minutes on that, just laying into me. And I just met this guy, and he's also an idol of mine who created some of the world's best records that influenced me.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there, and he hasn't really had a lot of communication with us in terms of broing down kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the first communication is my idol sitting there berating me for 30 minutes about being a music nerd and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And it'll just always stick with me because it was like this really cool little bonding experience. And then after that, I would start making fun of him, and it was like the icebreaker.
Yeah.
More than anything for an idol of mine,
For sure.
And it took to break the ice, not this digital world, not this recording world, not all that, but him making fun of me for notating something.
Piano. That's awesome, man.
And it was just, I don't know why, but it'll always stick in my head.
Yeah. That record was, Frederick, I think he did a great job with it. I mean, as far as like the guitar tones and stuff like that, like there was something about it that was like very raw, kind of like anti today's recordings. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you can't really hear the drums all the way, you know, and the guitars are very warm and very old school. But there was just something that was captured with that like raw vibe that just like really resonates with me.
Well, and look at how not digital, but modern recording has changed and everything. You got to remember, Hidden Hands was February 2002 when we recorded it. So in terms of evolution of music, comparing it to humans and all that, we're talking caveman days.
Yeah.
You know, back when it was warm, analog, raw. I mean, we still did it digital in Pro Tools and all that.
Yeah.
But then it was transferred, before we went to the mastering, it was actually transferred to tape.
Really?
And he took the whole thing, transferred it to tape, and then sent it off to Joran, who did the mastering, the big famous Swedish guy.
Yeah.
And it was all done from tape there.
Wow.
So it still had that analog quality to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a big thing Frederick was about, was using digital for your editing and everything else, you know, for the ease of the recording.
Yeah, yeah.
But then reconverting back to analog for that warmth and that old sound.
That's awesome.
And I think it was captured perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely timeless. So which of the records is your favorite? That you were a part of?
That's weird because some of them I'm really proud of this sonically, but I'm not really digging the song, but the recording was great. And then some of them, maybe the song's a little over the top, or not the best song that some people else would, you know, might like, but I just love playing it. The riff's just fun.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like this catch-22 on certain ones. Like, I love listening to the song itself deliver us. I think it was one of our greatest songs. It was a little bit more progressive, way more technical, but damn, that song's a bitch to play. It's not fun at all. Listening to it's brilliant, but Paradox with Flies, I love the song itself. I think we actually captured something new and unique for our band, not for music in general or the style, but for us. It was branching out, and the song is just so much fun to play. It's enjoyable to play it. It's like your fingers are having this cool little gymnastics workout, you know?
That's
it's
awesome.
Like you get happy fingers at the end.
Yeah.
So out of all of them, I'd have to say Paradox with Flies would by far be my favorite.
The song, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. And that was on Deliver Us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So, I mean, band aside, Darkest Hour aside, what are you up to these days?
Working with a management company in Switzerland called Aeon Management. And the main goal of the management company is to take younger bands. And when I mean younger, I don't mean age of the members. I mean the age of the band.
Right.
And help build them up. So we offer them, a lot of the services offered are not services I offer, like the management side, booking, contacts, all that kind of stuff. I work for them as kind of an in-house producer to guide them in the songwriting. So not necessarily taking them and producing them and crafting their songs, but helping them avoid certain pitfalls early on. And so it's really almost like a mentorship rather than a management thing.
Oh, okay.
And the goal is to help them develop to something within a year time span that without any kind of extra guidance and people that have been there and done that, it might take you 6 or 7 years.
I see.
To help them out earlier on.
You got a team that you work with, or is this just your company?
We're building the team. So right now it's me and the manager. She's got some people that work on the social media side, helping out with that. I know nothing of that. She knows a little bit about it, but we're older. Social media game is definitely a young person's thing right now in terms of media and entertainment for music. So we have some younger people doing that side for us.
That's cool.
We partnered with a studio in Switzerland called Cadiceus Studios, and we're bringing a lot of bands through there. So we have editing assistants, and we're slowly building this. It's only been about a year and a half, really, in the making.
Nice.
So it's in its infant stage right now.
Would anyone be aware of any of the bands that you're working with right now?
No,
not.
Want
to give a shout out to any of those guys?
Well, I just finished a couple of things. One of the records I just finished is a band, Circle of Execution. Really cool. Awesome guys. We had so much fun in the entire stage, from the pre-production development to the actual record. I'm producing a band right now called Science of Disorder. They already have one record out. Really cool, like old school Swedish Entombed, Dismember kind of vibe. They remind me a lot of early Arch Enemy. Most of the bands that we're working with are not going to be known because since the goal of the company is to take these bands in their infant stage and build them up,
Right.
they're not really known. They don't have a big social media presence. Some of them don't have any demos, no records, nothing. So you're never going to really have
Yeah,
heard
so
of
you're just
them.
like birthing them.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the resume of our production stuff might be already starting to get pretty long and it doesn't have any big names. But that doesn't mean 2 years from now we haven't developed them into a big band.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like you just hope to hit the jackpot. Like one of them's gonna kind of pop a little bit.
Yeah. And not every band that we work with is going to be awesome at this stage, but that's part of the goal of the company is to get them to every band's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just help them further along.
Yeah.
Having done this for so many years, I think being an outsider looking at someone else's music is more valuable than probably a lot of people want to admit that it is if you're actually in the band itself. I think that guys, when they're writing music, they tend to get married to a lot of riffs and married to a lot of structures and arrangements and sort of kind of close themselves off to the idea of rearranging certain things. And I think that the bands that tend to have the most success are ones that are open to having like a third party like yourself come in and actually make those adjustments or open their eyes to hearing things in a way that they might not have heard them in their rehearsal space and things like that. And so
Right.
Have you bumped into any difficult personalities or anything like that in terms of helping people restructure their stuff?
There was a band that I was working with, and it wasn't. It's hard to explain to put into words. So basically, what happened was I was throwing them these ideas. They didn't understand why I was throwing these ideas at them. Hey, let's try this proggy part here, or let's try this vocal here. Let's do this. No, we want to do it like we wrote it. And so I literally was like, okay, well, you know what? Then cool. I'm going to go back to the hotel. Thank you for paying me. Keep doing what you're doing, because why am I here then?
Yeah.
And so they were like, okay, let's try this idea. Let's try this idea. And then they tried what I was pushing to them. And they said, we don't like it. We want to keep what we wrote. Cool. The exercise I was trying to prove to you guys is not only finding what you want to do and what you want to write as a band, but my exercise just showed you, now you know what you don't want.
Right.
So you can just avoid that pitfall right there.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I could have easily just said the whole process and what I was kind of doing.
Yeah.
But I preferred the more, just knowing these guys and their personality and their age, I preferred the more hands-on approach to let them see through the experience. Yeah, we don't really like that proggy side of things. We don't want to do it.
But at least you flipped every stone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Do you, in your personality type, do you ever feel, do you consider yourself like non-confrontational, or do you not mind having those kinds of difficult conversations? And reason I ask is I know, like, from myself, my standpoint, anytime, if I were to have that conversation, like, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I should go back to the hotel room. I always would get like kind of like, as I've had to have those talks before, of course, but I always kind of get like this sort of like sense of like adrenaline and like, oh, man, I was just, I got really confrontational there. Like, do you ever feel anything like that, or is that something that's kind of comfortable for you?
I'm paraphrasing too, because when I said that to him, I wasn't like, well, then why the hell am I here? I'm going to the. I mean, it wasn't that.
Right. No, I know what you meant, but even still, like the statement is kind of bold. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So for me, it really depends on the band, also, because this band that I'm speaking of, I had been working with them a while, so I knew their personalities and I knew how to talk to them and approach them. Because that's, I think, an important part of the production is knowing how to talk to certain people, learning their personalities. Yeah. And I knew at that time it had to be a little confrontational. That was the only way it was going to get achieved. I've worked with some bands, too, where that's going to completely scare them to where they're going to say, we don't even want to do the record anymore. So you have to balance those two things.
Right, yeah.
I mean, we've been talking about our kids this whole time, too.
Yeah.
A lot of those times of parenting, the learning process, it's the same thing with production, because you have to adapt to their personalities,
right?
Because you don't want them to cancel the project, because you want to do the project, and obviously you want the money because you got bills to pay and all that kind of stuff. So you have to learn to talk to each individual member as if they were your child, even if they're a 30-year-old man or a 55-year-old man.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to talk to them, just like you do your child. How you discipline your child when he's being a complete asshole or he's being awesome. Like,
Yeah.
you have to talk to him completely different. And it's the same with these bands. Like,
Yeah.
you have to think of them as children, even though they're not.
Yeah.
Like, they might be very intelligent people. What I mean by think of them as children is you have to learn how to talk to them.
Right. Yeah. And come from like almost like a fatherly love kind of thing. Like, I know
Yeah.
y'all might not like that, but
Yeah.
we're gonna have to try it.
And each person in this world is a different personality. And in a band, you might have personality type A in the guitar player and B in the drummer, and you have to treat them completely different. You might have a drummer that's so passive aggressive, you just have to be a dick to him to get anything done. You don't
Yeah.
want to be. You're like, oh, that's so not me. But
Yeah.
if I want this thing done, I have to just say, shut up and do it like this.
Yeah.
And you feel bad, but you know that's his personality type, and that's the only way to get it done.
Man, yeah. That's rough. Sometimes that's rough. Yeah, I still like, that's something I've been working on, like personally, is just like trying to get better at that stuff. You know what I mean? Well, I don't know that I've ever been necessarily bad at that stuff, but not letting it rile me up. You know what I mean? I guess that's where I would fall short. You know, in anything. I mean, it could be just walking down the street. You know what I mean? So maybe someone bumps into me wrong, or I share like words with somebody about something, and it's like,
Right.
It lingers with me longer than it should. You know what I mean?
So one of the things I always try and do, depending on scheduling and all that, some of the bands, one of the bands that we're working with now, Nakaruga, they live near like the Italian-Swiss border. So for them to come up to Lausanne, where I work, is not an easy trip. It's like a good 4-hour ride and all that. So depending on scheduling and stuff, I always try, before we even start production, doing anything, there's a really cool restaurant in Lausanne called the King Size Bar. I love it. They got great food, good drinks, just nice atmosphere. It's a cool place to sit outside. So I'll bring the band there, and we'll have a meeting. And it's not really a meeting in terms of let's figure out budget and how we're recording this. It's literally just talking to them. Where did you grow up? Learning the personalities of the people. So I know on day one when I get in, okay, this is how this person likes to work, and this is how this person likes to work.
Yeah.
And being able to just start right away knowing how these people want their things done and knowing a little bit about them as a person really helps capture the essence in the production,
Right. So with all that being said, I know we talked about the band, and you talked about your business and some of the bands you're working with now. Like, do you find that you have a lot of hobbies outside of music, or what are you into, like when it comes to like not doing things that are like music related? I know obviously we both have kids, so that's a big part of it.
It's pretty much that.
Yeah, being a dad.
Yeah,
hanging out with your son.
Yeah, I mean, the production side takes a lot of extra work and energy too, because when I fly home from Europe, then it's editing, getting files together, getting stuff to send to the band for everything that we just did the last month. Obviously, they need to listen to it and check everything out, so I got to get all those files together.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a constant work schedule to get all that stuff flowing and then still spend time with my son. So I really don't have a lot of time for extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
Because most of them are involved with my son, going to play basketball with him or take him hiking or stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you ever think about that? Like, does that ever weigh on you? Like, man, I wish I had time, like an outlet for something that wasn't, music related, or my son, or is it
Not
that
really,
something that you're just totally fulfilled by that stuff?
Yeah, because I really do honestly have no other interests.
Yeah.
Like my son's a huge gamer. He loves video games. And so he's got all the systems. He's got the PlayStation, the Xbox, the Switch, all that. He loves playing games with his dad, spending time with his dad. And so I tried to get into gaming to like spend that time with him.
Yeah.
And I like the aspect, and I like playing games with him, and it's fun, but I'm just horrible at it. So it's not a lot of fun to really try and get into Call of Duty and all that kind of stuff and get your ass whooped by a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
It's just
so
humiliating.
and it's too time consuming to try and get good at it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's like you have to dedicate real time to getting good at that stuff. And I know for me, like when I've sat down and tried to play video games, and I like basketball, so I'll play like the 2K on the PlayStation 4 or whatever, and I'll do that for 30 minutes, and or do it online with some other player and just get murdered, like beyond belief. It's like it's a kind of a turn off, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do this long enough to actually get great at it to be able to compete with these people. So I don't know. It's kind of like, I'll just go back to work, make money,
For me, at the same time, if I have a little bit of downtime, instead of going towards hobbies and all that kind of stuff, I'm just a knowledge nerd, I guess. So I'm always going and watching tutorials or reading something on a new mixing technique or a new amp or how to work with this certain IR and this amp sim, and I'm always just involved in that, even in my off time.
Same here. Yeah. I mean, I'll go down like YouTube rabbit holes for like hours. Just, I mean, personally, I'm really like fascinated by like the interaction between people, you know what I mean? Like, or the interaction between like males and females, and like, I don't know, for whatever reason, like I'm super fascinated by like why certain dudes get like friend zoned, you know what I mean? And like why other dudes are like, slaying everything that they talk to, you know what I mean? Like that stuff fascinates me, and I spend a lot of time this year like studying that stuff and learning about that. And I'm married too, so like there's certain aspects of like those intersexual dynamics that still work like with your spouse or with your girlfriend the same way they would work with someone you just met, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that stuff aside, like general personal development stuff and like leadership, or like we were talking about like self-help stuff, like I'm super into that. So I guess I would say like that would be my hobby, listening to podcasts like Tim Ferriss, and who wrote like that 4-Hour Work Week and things like that. Are you into any of that stuff at all? Or
so on my iPad, I have an entire folder of all these PDFs of different books, and they range the whole gamut of like audio frequency spectrum math books to self-help stuff to comedy to just dumb cartoons. And I've been really getting into a lot of stuff. I cannot remember the guy's name right now, but the book is called something like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Oh yeah, that's really popular.
So I've been really getting into those style books, just not for self-help, not for any of that kind of stuff, just because they're interesting reads.
Oh, totally.
And so that
I just got that book. Is it good?
I haven't gotten all the way through it yet, because I went down the rabbit hole of not YouTube, but once I found that book, I got into like chapter 1, and I went into the rabbit hole finding 8,000 other books that are in the same genre.
Yeah.
And now I'm like stuck in that whole thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you finish that book, or did you start it, or you just kind of?
I just started it, but I'm not done.
There's a lot of books like that. There was another one called like When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. It's like sort of some of that thing. It's like learning how to draw boundaries with people, and learning how to like just carry yourself in a manner that is more not necessarily respectable, but in a way that allows you to kind of get more out of life than what you want without stressing about the things that don't matter.
Right.
And that if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of what subtle art is about, right? It's just kind of like,
I haven't gotten far enough to be able to know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I definitely need to check that out. Well, that's awesome.
And there's I've been watching a lot on this dude. Some of the stuff he says, I think, is just asinine and makes no sense. But he has this quality and character to him that I cannot turn away. I don't know how you say his name. It's like Gary Vaynerchuk or...
Oh, Gary V, yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, you love that guy?
Oh, I can't stop watching him.
Yeah.
Even if I agree or don't agree, I just have to watch everything he does.
Yeah, he rocks the beanie like you.
Yeah, dude's awesome.
Yeah, man. A lot of people. I told you I did like a self-development podcast as well.
Yeah,
and I'm just super into that stuff. So I always, every time I bring it up with somebody, it's like everyone's like, dude, have you heard of Gary V? Have you heard of Gary V? Yeah, I don't even know how to say his last name, Vanderjuk or something like that.
He just. But so with Facebook and social media, I'm horrible at it because one, I really just don't care because I'm not an artist at a level that social media is important. It doesn't bring me money. It doesn't make me money. Darkest Hour was a long time ago before Facebook and before all that. So social media doesn't really do anything for me in terms of career and artists and stuff. So I don't really know how to socially behave on Facebook because I don't know what to post. What do I do? So every once in a while, I just put some random thing up like, I miss my kid or whatever.
Yeah. I think you're an outlier in that regard.
Well, I
because-
posted something about Gary Vee.
Yeah.
I was watching one of his videos one night, and it was kind of one of those, like, just sitting there and just got in this mood in this moment, and just posted something stupid on Facebook like, how cool would it be just to hang out with this guy for an hour? Not to talk any of this stuff, his whole spiel and everything he's going into, but to just go to a Cheesecake Factory and just talk to him.
Yeah, let's have a beer, you know?
It'd be a very interesting hour because you can see in his heavy personality that you're not going to talk about any of that stuff, but 10 minutes into it, he's going to start getting into it because he's just that charismatic about it. You know?
Yeah. He's incredibly charismatic. Like, I think that if you were to describe him in one word, that's what it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did he come up?
Investment with like Uber and all that, right?
No, he originally started with his wine company. So back when the internet
With his dad, that's what it was.
Yeah.
He started shipping wines.
Well, but the whole thing was that his whole thing was like he's been a hustler since he was younger, and then he also, when the internet barely started coming out, he was one of the businesses that were on the internet.
Yeah, but didn't he then invest in like Uber and all the other companies like early on?
I'm not too sure what exactly he invested in, but I think his whole thing is just like, of course, just go fucking do it, and then second is if it's hot, fucking do something with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Regardless of.
I want to say, and I could be 100% wrong, that he was early investing on, maybe not Uber, but like Twitter and all the other things that are really big. I think he was like an early investor in that, whether it was monetary or advice or whatever. But he was involved, I believe.
Got paid highly out of it.
In some of these startups, you know, because he took the risk because he saw this shit's going to be hot. Like,
yeah. Have you thought about diving deeper into the social media stuff? Like because I mentioned that I felt like that was not that it's admirable because I wish I could disconnect from Facebook and social media. I mean, I don't like it. I like it for what it's done for, my businesses. I wouldn't be here, I could say pretty safely, if it wasn't for social media, as far as growing like a home-based business at one point is where I started my studio. I was in a home setting for several years, and then building my studio clientele, sharing music and promoting and talking about what gear I'm using and bands I'm working with and all that stuff. It creates it's just more out there. And with the ToneCrate stuff, I mean, the whole business is literally built online through like Facebook ads.
I mean, your business is definitely one of the businesses that social media can really benefit. And it's a great thing now for the kind of stuff that you're doing with ToneCrate and getting the word around and people being able to share and stuff like that. For me, it's a little different because I don't come from a band or a genre where the lead singer's famous and you have this guy and he's the big social media presence and all that. For us, we come from a different era. Now, if I was 26 right now, we'd be talking a completely different story.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
But right now it's like, you have Atreyu, not reforming because they never really broke up, but coming back, Throw It on Unearth, all these bands are still really doing it. I just feel like I was never this big clouded artist. We never put ourselves in the limelight back then, whether we were big, small, medium, whatever. So that's always been part of me. It was never to be in that limelight. And right now, to me, it seems like a grab at trying to be youthful. If I'm 41 and all of a sudden I start trying to create this social media presence, it's like, what is he really going after? If I'd been doing it all along, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But it's like a band that's death metal for 20 years and they turn 50 and all of a sudden they sound like Nickelback. Oh, they want a cash grab. They're trying to do this.
Yeah.
It's the same thing for me. If all of a sudden I try and have this huge social media presence and start taking pictures and they're posed and I'm dressed up and all this, like, what the fuck is he going after right now? What's his intentions?
Nah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that people would look at it like that.
I'm not saying people would look at like that. That's what I would think, and it would make me feel
Like
I wouldn't want to do it anymore musically if it becomes like, oh, I'm trying to do this for this. Because I don't need some bands use social media and some businesses because it helps their business. It's good for them. Some people, like me, I'm not a big artist. Social media for me would be a validation thing. And I don't need that validation that people like me. They like my music because even though I'm not very popular and big on social media, I still get messages every day from kids that are like, oh, I love your record. I love what you did.
Yeah.
That's my validation. I don't need to go post a picture to try and get that. You know?
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. Would you say that you're naturally a little low key?
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of enjoy not being in the light.
I don't know because I've never been in the light.
Stop it! You were on MTV. I mean, that's as in the light as someone can be. I mean, Darkest Hour is huge. I think.
Honey Boo Boo was on TV. I wouldn't say that that's the most amazing person in the world either. You know?
It's like, yeah, but no, that's still. I mean, I think you're very humble, which I respect. You know what I mean? There was a point in time where, I mean, Darkest Hour was probably the biggest name in metal. And I'm not saying that as like a super fanboy, but I'm saying like I wouldn't
say we were like the biggest name, but we were starting to climb in metalcore. And so the way that I kind of look at it, and this is no dig against any of the bands I'm going to mention or anything, especially because they're all still my friends and I talk to them all the time. We kind of climbed to this level with all the other bands, Atreyu, the Throwdowns, all those, the ones we all did Ozfest with.
Yeah. We
all kind of climbed to this level where we were all like top dogs in the metalcore world at the time.
I guess that's more what I meant. I mean, maybe, what are we talking? We're not talking about like Metallica or something like that.
Exactly. You know what I mean? But, we mean for our genre.
But I'm saying, yeah, like in the terms of like metalcore. For example, I mean, I think it was 2004. I was 18 years old, and my band opened up for one of the tours y'all did with Between the Buried and Me and Cattle Decapitation, Fear Before the March of Flames, and at the White Rabbit here in San Antonio. And R.I.P. to the rabbit. I mean, the show was sold out, was packed. It was the venue was sold out before the show even started, meaning front wall to wall. I mean, it was there. I mean, it's again Between the Buried and Me, Darkest Hour, Cattle Decapitation, but Darkest Hour, like you mentioned, and Unearth, and I'm going like Shadows Fall, and like those bands from back in the day. I mean, I think in terms of metalcore, even like Killswitch Engage, like you guys they were all big. Like everyone was big, right? Like everyone had a place. Everyone was really cool with each other.
And we all helped each other out back then. Yeah. Like as one band got bigger, Atreyu, for example. Well, Darkest Hour was bigger before I was in the band. And then they, helped out Atreyu. And then Atreyu got bigger than Darkest Hour. So what does Atreyu do on their next tour? Let's take Darkest Hour out. Let's all help each other out and get each band bigger, because as we get bigger, that band gets bigger. We just, as a family, build this genre.
Yeah.
And it was a really cool thing. We kind of, unfortunately, when we got to that level and all the other bands, we didn't adapt to the modern changing thing like Killswitch, Atreyu, everybody, where they started going not a poppier route, but more commercialized, more accessible.
Yeah, playing the tracks and things like that.
Not necessarily that, but just including clean singing, following the standardized verse, chorus, bridge, taking elements of popular music and bringing it into their music. We didn't fight against it. We just didn't do it.
Right.
So we were kind of left in the dust a little bit. So we got to the top tier with all these other bands. And then as they kept progressing, our top tier all of a sudden became mid-tier.
It's remarkable what Killswitch has done.
Yeah.
I mean, and the same, I guess, Avenged Sevenfold was kind of in that little area as well. Avenged Sevenfold started off like Unearth.
Right.
Like just a no-name young metalcore band. It was like someone told me, I remember it was like, I don't know, 2001. They were like, yeah, Avenged Sevenfold's like Guns N' Roses if you listen to hardcore, you know what I mean? Like, or metalcore. And now they're like Metallica big, and
yeah, and there's these two, what I think are kind of two aspects to it when it comes to metalcore. This doesn't really kind of correlate to the pop world and the country world and stuff like that. But you have two separate sides, and one of them is the luck, the right place at the right time. Some of those bands like Avenged Sevenfold, when they get on Guitar Hero and the song blows up, right place at the right time. That's not saying that they haven't done that later on in life without Guitar Hero, but it might have taken them 15 years instead of 1 year. It doesn't mean that they weren't destined to be there. But then there's some bands that get there without the luck just because they're awesome bands. The unfortunate thing is it's far and fewer in between for the awesome band to get to that level, because if it's just your band and it's not the luck and it's not the management and the team and the money behind you, then it's going to take you 15, 20 years to get to that level. You can get there.
Yeah.
But after 10 years in the industry of not getting at that level, that's when people bow out and take off.
Yeah.
Because they can't put in the 15 years of being broke, not making it, not being at that level. They have to walk away and go get the desk job.
Yeah. It's also a very different beast these days, with no one buying music and, bands needing to survive on touring and selling merch. And I mean, I see guys all the time doing like guitar lessons. Everyone seems to have a different thing that coincides with the touring that they use to kind of keep themselves afloat. I mean, unless I think a lot of people aren't aware of what really goes into the touring band scene when you're not Avenged Sevenfold or Metallica or Slipknot or something like that. I mean, these guys are, they're touring and they're making money from being in a band, but then when they stop touring, they have to go do something to pay their bills. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people, like young kids, 17, 18 years old, that are playing guitar and they're watching these, music videos and they're seeing these bands on tour. I think that when they start bands, they have this image that, when they get signed, that they're going to be able to live on being in a band. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I don't think that's a possibility even. And that's not to discourage kids from being in a band, but it's like setting expectations that you need to make sure you're taking care of yourself with other skills. You know what I mean? Like,
well, it comes back to like my son. Right now, when he was 5 and 6, I want to be a cop. I want to be this. Now at 11, he wants to be a YouTuber. That's his dream. Now I'm not going to crush his dream, but I have to tell him every day to be realistic about it. Kiddo, not everybody's going to be a successful multimillionaire YouTuber.
Yeah.
Don't put all your eggs in that one basket. You still got to get good grades. You still got to find something, because that's a once in a chance in a lifetime job for these people that actually get that.
Yeah.
And I tell them all the time, I'm like, now I don't know these people. I don't know what behind the scenes they do and how much control they have and all that kind of stuff. But my son's name's Soren. Soren, doesn't take a lot of talent to be some of these YouTubers. Some of these kids have no talent. All they are is famous on being obnoxious.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's only far and few in between. But he kind of gets me a little bit too, because he doesn't really say this, but he kind of hints at certain things. And he's like, Dad, you do music. Isn't that the same thing?
Throwing a little shade.
Like putting all your eggs in one basket,
yeah.
hoping that you're going to make millions and be in this big band. Aren't you telling me not to? And I'm like, yeah, I'm telling you from experience. Look at me. I don't have a lot of money and I'm struggling to make ends meet to pay for your shit. I'm trying to tell you, don't make the same mistake I did.
Yeah.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I would have always tried music. Keep trying the YouTube thing. He's got his little YouTube set up. He has his own YouTube channel. He's starting to create videos and he's learning the process and all that. But that doesn't mean forget the other stuff behind the scenes.
Right.
To like make sure that you're secured later in life. And I think that's what bands really need to do. You look at some of these successful bands today, like Periphery and all those guys. They were smart with their outside ventures outside of the band to make sure that they're secure, that if the band doesn't happen, they're okay.
Yeah.
Now they're not mega millionaires.
They don't have to tour to be able to continue earning income.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest key. Would you offer any advice to bands that are looking to get started touring and things like that? Like say they're playing locally. There's a lot of bands I work with, for example, in this situation. They play locally, they do well, they have a decent draw, they're starting to play around the area, they're getting a good response, they're wanting to branch out. Like what would you say to those guys to like
find the team? Because whether you think you can do the booking yourself, the management yourself, the media yourself, and all that kind of stuff, you might be able to. But the way that not just the music industry works, at any industry. I mean, I worked in a factory for a little while after I was not touring. Even that industry, there's still some crossover. You want that management because it's seen as amateurish for certain things. So let's say you're a band who's mildly successful. You start to go to that mid-range level of 1,000, 1,500 cap venues. And you walk in there, and your bass player is your tour manager, just because he's good at it and all that stuff. And you walk in to talk to them about catering and production and all the other kind of stuff. And, oh, we need to talk to your tour manager. I'm the bass player, that's me. All of a sudden, you're seen as an amateur, right? Oh, these guys are selling out 1,500 caps and they can't even afford a tour manager? You know, you're seen as amateur. So bands, I think, even if it costs them money and they have to spend this money, they need that team, because that team is seen as professional by having the manager and all that. If they're good.
Yeah.
You don't want to just hire your buddy and be like, oh, this is our manager. You know, you want somebody in the scene. And that's one of the problems within not just music, but like I said, like all the industries, is perception is everything. Oh, this band has a manager. They have a lighting guy and all this. And it's not just their friend. It's actually a real tour manager, a real lighting guy. Oh, they must be professional. No, because they paid for these people to do the job. You have the perception of being a professional band.
Right, right.
And so that's the whole thing. Short is what I would tell some of these bands, and I could be wrong, but let them know perception is everything. How your band is perceived is going to dictate how your career in the future happens.
I think that's huge. You know, I can speak for to that point from experience, like with the ToneCrate. You know, when I started ToneCrate, it was March of. It was not last March, but the year before. So it'll be, we'll be doing our third year starting this March. And I spent an incredible amount of time and money and resources to create logos and websites that look, you know, expensive. You know what I mean? That look like they are, because I didn't want there to be any sort of other perception. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't trying to create like a mom and pop thing of like buy Cliff's Tones or something like that. You know what I mean? The Cliff Tones. You know, like I wanted people, like I looked up to a guy like Steven Slate. You know what I mean? Like I wanted this to be, and I still want this to be, something that is viewed as something like Steven Slate. You know, where you're dealing with a company. You're not dealing with some guy.
I'll tell you, like,
you know?
when you first approached me and got a hold of me to do this, I knew of the company. I'd heard of you guys. I didn't know a lot about it, but I went and checked it out, and I have a bunch of friends that love the ToneCrate stuff. So I knew who you guys were. My perception at the beginning when I looked at the website and all that kind of stuff was it's so professional. I literally thought I was going to walk in here to a bunch of dudes with suits and sticks up their ass. Like, I didn't know it was going to be like this cool little metal setting and a bunch of awesome dudes that are fun to hang out with. I thought it was just this, not pretentious, but this like super just professional. I mean, you guys are professional, but just this, how do I say it?
A little more uptight kind of situation.
Yeah.
Oh, well, see, to me, that's a huge compliment. You know what I mean? Because I put a lot of effort into making sure that this thing felt like a corporate. And
ToneCrate has that perception, which I think you need for what your business is doing.
Yeah. Because
you seem so professional in everything that you're doing with the ToneCrate stuff. But then behind the scenes, you're also just a bunch of awesome dudes that are down to earth.
Yeah, yeah.
Which,
I appreciate that.
If you guys were a bunch of stuck-up assholes, we wouldn't be doing a podcast right now.
Right.
I'd be at the hotel like, oh my God, thank God I'm rid of them, you know?
Oh, man, I appreciate that. Yeah, so
you guys have the best of both worlds, and I think that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, that's important, and I like for that to be a thing. You know?
But back to the perception thing, I think if I had, well, not me, but if a bunch of these people going to check out ToneCrate stuff, they might hear the tones are awesome and really like it. But if there's a bunch of pictures of you guys like shirtless and thongs skiing, nobody's going to really buy it because their perception is...
Don't go ahead and delete those pictures.
You know, even though the tones are awesome, the perception is you're a bunch of jokers that don't take your tones seriously. Nobody's going to want to buy it. And I think it's the same with bands. If you're a joke band, like, dude, Municipal Waste, some of our closest friends, we grew up with those guys. We love them. I used to give the guitar player Ryan lessons. Like,
that's awesome.
And we were both broke as shit. I needed money, so I was teaching guitar. He was broke as shit, but he didn't have any money, so he would bring a 12-pack of PBR, and then we'd drink and do some guitar stuff.
That's awesome. And he's still in the band?
He's still in Municipal Waste, yeah. I don't think we actually ever did one lesson. I think we just kind of hung out more than anything. Those dudes are awesome, but their perception is they're not professional. They're a bunch of jokesters. But that's what their band is.
But they're professional at looking unprofessional.
Exactly.
Right?
And when
Does
it comes
that make sense?
Exactly. And when
Yeah.
it comes down to it behind the scenes, do they show up on time for tour? Yes. Do they know the material? Do they put on a good show?
Yeah, it sounds right. They don't sound like a local band. They're a
Right.
real band.
So there's
you
a
know?
difference, I think, with bands between perception and image.
Yeah.
Because it's okay for your image to be a bunch of partiers and jokesters and all that kind of stuff. That's great. The perception shouldn't be that they're a bunch of unprofessional partiers and jokesters.
I mean, that's kind of what Darkest Hour was.
yeah.
You know, you guys were a party. I mean, there was the word party on like merchandise, right?
Yeah, we
There
were.
was like party shirts.
We took it a little too far sometimes.
Yeah, like
you know?
I mean, but it felt like a good time, which is I
Yeah.
think was what appealed, like the video in the van, and like for and like the handheld camcorder music video, and like
yeah,
like
and it was don't take yourself too serious.
right,
you know?
yeah, like that was those were cool times. So I would be a fool if we didn't talk about some of the other stuff that you worked on, and I know a lot of what you were involved with after Darkest Hour was Scar the Martyr and Vimic, and
Yep.
you were in those bands with Joey Jordison.
Yes.
People know of Slipknot. What can you say of your experience working with that guy? And I know there was a falling out of some sort, and you
Yeah,
can't get into a whole lot of that.
It
But
was an online thing that happened.
I would say, just I guess to frame the question, like what was something that you took from your experience working with him and both being in the band and being friends with the guy that would say would be a positive?
I loved almost every second of being in a band with him. We had some great times, some of the most fun. I mean, I lived with the guy in Iowa for a long time. He set me up a bedroom in his house. Just a really good, heartwarming dude to bring me in like that. When we were writing, we had a lot of fun. I mean, there were differences, but not really arguments. You know, we had a really good time writing, and I enjoyed every moment of that. It's one of those things that there are certain times in people's lives where the stars just don't align. Because when we started doing stuff together, and then I ended up moving with him in Iowa, everything was tip-top perfect. Things just change in life where my life changed personally, his life changed personally, things are going on, and those stars just move, and at one time they collide, you know? And it just ended up not working out. But I'm very proud of every song we created together. I mean, we have tons of music that never got released. I don't know if it ever will get released. I don't know what they're doing with it. But I have a bunch of files that I've heard over the years of demos that we've done together. Not just full songs, but riffs. Just little things here and there. And everything that we created was awesome. And I'm very proud of all of it.
That's cool.
Because it was a learning experience as well. Because he writes songs completely different than I do. And so learning his aspect of how he wrote songs really taught me a lot about song structure itself, you know? So it was just a really cool learning experience, and I took so much away from that. Sometimes things just don't line up and don't work out, and there's no point in really dwelling on it and wondering why. Why did this not work out, and self-analyzing. If there's a potential for it to work out again in the future, then of course self-analyze and figure these things out. But I know that there's nothing that will ever happen with me in that band again, not because of bad things and bullshit and all that, just it's not in the cards.
Right.
So why sit and analyze? Why isn't this working? Why just it's just
It's a shame to live in the past.
I take some great things away from it, and I met some really cool guys through the process of being in those bands with him. Not just the members in the bands themselves, but when we did like the Danzig tour, with all the Slipknot stuff Joey did, he's met people all over the world from every caliber and every walk of the industry that you can imagine. So these guys would come to the shows, and I'm like, is that who I think it is? Like, I'm a huge fan of that dude. So getting to meet all these people through his past connections and stuff was a great experience.
That's a little bit of a different animal, right, than doing the Darkest Hour stuff?
Completely.
Yeah. And that's because he's like a celebrity of sorts. Would you say that's the case, or was it just dealing with Roadrunner is a little different than Victory?
Yeah.
Is that
difference in labels? I wouldn't say necessarily he's like a celebrity of sorts. I mean, the dude is super famous for what he did for drumming and what Slipknot did for metal and merchandising and everything else. I wouldn't say that he's famous and a celebrity. I would say he's just extremely well known.
Right.
Because I think there's a difference.
That might be a me thing. Like
Joey's
he's a
also
celebrity to
not.
me.
He's not a celebrity type.
Yeah.
Where he goes out looking for he likes to keep to himself too. I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I don't think he likes that attention of, oh, I'm this famous drummer, I'm this.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think he likes that or is looking for it. So that's why I'd say he's well known rather than like a celebrity.
Okay, I got you.
For me, a celebrity is somebody like Brad Pitt that goes out and has paparazzi following him. And as much as some of these actors and all that say, oh, I want this, I want my private life. Well, then why did you just tweet, hey, I'm going to this restaurant at 7:30? Like, you're telling people where you're going to be for photographs. Come on, give me a fucking break.
Yeah, some press, some publicity.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had mentioned that that you had taken some stuff away from writing songs with Joey. I had heard through the years, especially, with the departure and all that stuff, that he was real heavy-handed in writing a lot of stuff for that band. And was that the case for you guys as well? And like, what was it about his writing that really like was that? What did it teach you, I guess?
To sometimes simplify. Not meaning you have to dumb down the riff, but in terms of writing, sometimes it's okay on a verse to just not even have the guitar. Let's think about what the vocal's doing underneath the chord progression and stuff like that. So simplifying in terms of not riffing and all that, but songwriting itself. And then the other side of the spectrum, sometimes overdoing it. Hey, for the last 3 songs, we haven't had a guitar solo. Let's put some shredding shit right there. Let's overdo it on this one.
Yeah.
So just really thinking of everything which has changed with Spotify and everything else, but really thinking of the record as a collective, as a whole, which you can't really do anymore because people don't consume music the same.
The attention spans are different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing we took away, and we talked about a lot. And for him, it used to be, and for me, it used to be collectively as a whole. You have this record, and you have to create this journey from start to finish on the record. Now, we have to do that song by song, and that's something that me and him really focused on, and I learned a lot about the songwriting, not just necessarily from him, but through the process, was making sure that song is now the record. Because what if that's the only song these Spotify listeners hear from you, and it's the first song they hear, and what if that's the first thing that comes on, and I mean, this is hypothetically, but they bump their phone, and now the first thing they ever hear from you is the song starting at 2 minutes and 30 seconds of song 6.
Yeah. Making sure it's always a banger,
That part better be fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Because it used to be, oh, well, that's tied to here, but on a cassette, they've learned and listened to the whole record from there to there, so they kind of know, and they're gauging it in that whole aspect. Now you can't really do that,
That sucks. That's a really, really, really unfortunate byproduct of the streaming stuff.
Right.
Is like records don't mean anything, and you can't tell those stories anymore.
No.
Unless you like force people to.
Yeah.
Which is not even possible. Yeah, but I know we've been going for a while, man. I appreciate your time. And is there anything else you wanted to hit on, or anything you want to shout out, or
I mean, just the whole thing, like we're saying, is with songwriting and all that. That's something important I'm really trying to do with all these bands, and through the whole process, I'm actually starting to do some really cool stuff, like meeting you guys and coming doing the ToneCrate and stuff. And I really want to guide some of these younger bands and build my production career and all that. I might not be the be-all, end-all, the best at it, but I have, I think, some wisdom to impart, because along with that comes things of what to do, but also what not to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Like your band, your presence, and your songwriting they're only as important as like your Tinder biography. I mean, your song has to be the same thing.
Yeah.
You literally, I think, see these bands that are 18 years old these days with digital marketing and everything else they're doing. They spend more time crafting their Tinder profile than they do their songs.
Oh yeah,
It's like, come on, man.
Preach, man. I mean, yeah. I'm gonna make sure to snip that clip of you saying that out and just play it on replay on my TV, because I have to say that all the time to these bands. But yeah, I mean, I want to thank you for everything, of coming down here and doing this pack. The tones are awesome. Everyone's going to love the tones. And also, just for being an influence, man. I mean, I think what you did with all those records with Darkest Hour back in the day, I mean, it's not just me. I mean, I posted that picture of us together on my personal Facebook, and I mean, I think 3 or 4 different dudes said the same thing. Like, man, that guy was a huge influence on my writing for several years. And so, thank you for that. It's awesome. So,
well, I mean, thank you guys for bringing me out and giving me the opportunity, and thank you guys for being awesome and just making everything so accommodating. And
no problem, man.
It's been a pleasurable experience, and I enjoyed it because, like I said, I'm taking stuff. I try and take something away from everything in every situation that I do, whether it's good or bad or meaningless or positive or hateful or whatever. And I've learned a lot from this experience, just watching you work and seeing you do things, and all positive, obviously. Right. But
Thanks,
I'm taking a lot away from this, and I feel like I have new friends now. Which is really cool.
Go eat some Tex-Mex some more. All right, man. Well, that's good. I think we're good to shut it down. But appreciate it, Miguel. Thank you for everything. Yep. Or off camera. Go ahead and pull those tracks up for us. No, all right. We'll see you guys.